Amazing, Nick. You're an amazing individual. Don Fox recommended I gotta talk to you. You're absolutely friendly. We finally got a chance to meet at RLC, and I definitely wanted to get your viewpoint on the whole restaurant industry. I want to learn a little bit more about the little Greek concept. I want to see what's making you successful. What are you guys doing? And share your feedback. You've been around for quite a long time. You've grown brands from a handful of units to multi-hundred units. So I believe there's a lot of expertise here that everybody can learn from. But let's start off with what makes a restaurant successful. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, certainly honored to be here with you. As I was joking earlier, I wish I had that hair that you have mastered very well. I used to have good hair, but I guess I am old. So I have folks, I've been around and I've had probably 40 years in the restaurant industry and really been watching the trials and tribulations as concepts kind of come and go and the industry changes the dynamics. And so definitely glad to be here. And I always learn great things from you and your viewers as well. So it's an honor to be here. So I guess your question was like, what's going on and kind of where we're going, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, what makes a restaurant successful? I wanna start with that core topic.
Yeah.
How do I, as a restaurateur, get leverage on everybody else and everything else?
And that is kind of where the rubber hits the road is it's basically all in the guest experience. That when you go to a restaurant, you and I talk about Dave's Hot Chicken. Is the food good, service good, restaurants clean? And I think right now where we're seeing the biggest friction is the whole value equation that people need to walk away feeling they got a good deal for the money. They can be spending $100 for a meal, and if they feel it's worth 150, that's the value. And I think we're seeing issues today, which our industry is kind of dealing with, is with the inflation over the last couple of years. Like even at Little Greek, our case of gyro meat went from $100 to $130, 30% bump. We've had to raise our prices now, and I see people talk to me even going to McDonald's or sticker shock. I took my kids to McDonald's. It's a $50 or $60 meal, Five Guys burgers, $40 for two burgers. So I think that our industry has to figure it out. And then to some extent, the gentleman at Chili's, he did a great job. He came out with that $10.99, great burger. They simplified the menu, and their sales are up 30%. So I think you and I talked a little earlier that there are operators who have figured it out and are hitting it hard and working through it, and some will not make it, and some have lost that equation and they'll kind of struggle. So that's. Are you getting a little problem with the sound? Are we okay? I got a little reconnecting thing going there. We're good. Okay. Yeah. So I said.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It actually records locally.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's a basic business that when somebody walks through that door or when they get the food delivered to their house, do they feel they're getting great food for the money they've spent? And our consumers are getting more sophisticated. My daughter grew up watching Rachel Ray. They get like these more interesting, more complex dishes, and they're looking to be challenged. So you see a lot of interesting, like Dave's Hot Chicken. That wasn't even on the radar, and they took a very nice hot flavor, spicy profile, and they made it work. But then you see like Jersey Mike's, they're kind of stick to their same thing for the last 40 years, and that became a home run as well. So there's always room for great operators. There's always room for folks who are kind of making things happen. I will say the industry continues to change. You and I talked a little earlier about, several years ago we were doing maybe 10% of our sales were DoorDash, Uber Eats, Easy Care. Now it's 36%. So you walk in our restaurants and not very busy. There's no lines, but the kitchen's jamming as food's going out the window that way too. So you definitely have to adjust and adapt. And that's kind of where the folks who have a bigger box and maybe they're kind of were really doing well in the 70s and 80s might not make it through these years as well. So there's always room for great operators, and there's always going to be exciting new folks. But at the same time, you have to kind of catch up with the times and stay ahead of the curve and try to keep innovating and thinking what's coming up next.
Interesting. I think that's absolutely true. Like if you focus on the core, again, the guest experience and the food quality, even me in the technology side, I'm always saying our products has to be number one. So in this case, food costs or food quality, and then customer service for us is people, etc. But on the restaurant side is the actual service, right? So if the food is not good, the service is not good, then good luck. You're not going to survive anyway. So focus on the core, those two core things. And then I always say you got to nudge the customer for retention, because the more I dig in, the more I see how major problem it is in the restaurant space in that retention side. And I don't understand why. It's not that complicated. It's very easy. It's not rocket science, but it's just not being done.
Well, one of the issues there is our industry is so diverse. I have friends who work for Coca-Cola and their competitor is Pepsi. And I have a friend who works for Goodyear and his competitor is Firestone. Our industry, there's thousands of different restaurants in a market. And so one of the nice things is in our industry, we all work together because we realize we're not going to get that consumer every single day. But at the same time, normally, and maybe how many you can tell me on your end, what is your normal, like most people have a core group of 3, 4, 5 restaurants that they kind of check out on a regular basis. And what do you think there? I mean, how many restaurants you kind of go to? Like kind of your go-to. Hey, I'm in the mood for pizza tonight or burger. What do you? Yeah, we normally find 3 or 4, and we want to get in that rotation.
Absolutely, yeah, and I have those too. I've been kind of my restaurant ventures have gone down a lot because of just the health type of it, and I'm focused a lot more on that. But I like if I wanted like Mexican, etc. I had my go-to spot, and what actually, so I had my own set like Mexican pizza, burger joints, etc. However, a lot of the ones that I went to, like I would go to, and then I wouldn't go back for maybe a year or so, just because it just didn't line up. I didn't hear from them, and they weren't top of mind. So I forgot, right? Like there was a great, great sushi place next to us, and my wife was like, "Hey, we were like, why didn't we go back?" It's like, oh, we kind of forgot about it, but they had this amazing dish that we went because of that, and ultimately they shut down, and now they're no longer there, right? All they had to do is just every month, every couple of months, just send a little quick note, just say, "Hey, Hamid, we know you love this dish because you order it every single time you come in," which is exactly the case. "We haven't seen you in 3 months. Come in and try it." Don't discount it. Don't do anything. Just say, "Hey, come back and try it." Be top of mind. I agree with you. The competition is so fierce nowadays that if you're not on top of mind, then good luck, because somebody else will be, and somebody else is gonna email them. Somebody else is gonna let them know that, hey, they exist every month or so, and then they're gonna get the business, and it's a zero-sum gain. Once I ate lunch, I'm done. I'm not going anywhere else. It's not like I'm not gonna, the money that I didn't spend today, I'm gonna spend tomorrow. So it kind of sucks because it's a zero-sum gain. But those who master it will absolutely just crush it.
Well, one of the things that your company kind of hits it, but you have these different generations. Like folks of my generation, we grew up newspapers, TV, radio, and my kids don't listen to the radio like normal, stations. They don't watch TV like the normal, main ones, and they don't. There's no newspaper, and then so how do you? But my crowd, folks like myself, we're not really going to Instagram, or we're not going to be really looking on Facebook necessarily. Where should I go eat? We will catch maybe the text, the email, but then I'm getting bombarded. Now I have 3 different levels of emails. Are they, my main? Are they social? Or are they promotional? And so that is one of and I think your company kind of addresses that. But how do you break through the clutter, and how do you get in to these people who it's really difficult to figure? There's no one size fits all answer to get all the consumers. I guess you got to kind of figure out who's your core customer, go after them, and try to keep them on as regulars. And one of the things you and I talked about before the show was one of the things Little Greek has done very successful. Our food travels well, and it's very healthy. And you touched on that as well. I think a lot of these concepts that my daughter, she's 27 and she's very focused on nutrition. She will not go to Five Guys. Maybe every it's a splurge deal. It's not every week deal, but that's kind of, every once in a while I'll go get I want some greasy cheeseburger, but that's very rare. And so we find catering is the big answer for us because it's a big ticket. You got a lot of folks who are kind of almost forced to eat your food. our food's healthy, so we kind of play off that office crowd very well. But it's a constant battle because everybody else is out there trying to figure out the same answers and issues. And I do feel that underlying the whole problem we're running into right now is that we had to raise prices, so lower end consumer, it's hard for them to eat on a regular basis. And even folks who have the disposable income, there's a sticker shock. I tell people years ago, we had a lunch for four at Outback, and I love Outback, but no alcohol, one appetizer, it's like $150 for lunch. Like, holy cow, and that's where our industry has to kind of meet those challenges,
Yeah.
have value, and also, getting the quality there. And then the other question I have for you would be, I don't understand why folks, we work so hard to have fresh food hot off the grill, and then they get Uber Eats and it's 30 minutes, it's room temperature by the time it gets to their house. So that it just kind of blows me away that our biggest thing at Little Greek was cooking everything to order, but the consumer now they'll stay at home. I guess they microwave it. I'm not even sure what they do. I know in my day, you go to a restaurant, if the food wasn't piping hot, that was almost like we're not coming back. Where today, the consumers want that high quality, but then are they kind of lowering their expectations as far as temperature and things like that? So I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that play, but clearly there's a lot going on, and it looks like that certainly the delivery side was not going away.
I agree. And I think, I always say never underestimate the power of convenience. People will pay more for convenience. They'll forego quality. They'll forego service. They'll forego a lot of things because it's easy. So if I'm sitting on my couch and it just makes it to me, it's worth 30% more, right? It's worth not having it as hot as it comes off the grill, etc. So, but also the next generation is a little bit different. I'm with you. I don't go to a restaurant just to have a meal. Like, obviously food is part of it, but traditionally, just looking at my own experience, when I'm going out, it's either I'm with friends, I'm catching up with somebody. I've got a lunch meeting today with another company, so that's that. Again, it's always around an occasion, and food is where everybody just gathers around the table to do that. And then sometimes, obviously, you're taking out. So, like if you're ordering pizza to go and you're taking it home, again, different type of environment. But I think ultimately you have to meet the customer where they are. If they're on the third party apps and you're not, well, you just missed that out. If you don't offer online ordering because your food doesn't travel well, guess what? You just lost that to somebody else. It's becoming a really difficult environment where I believe the gap is widening between those who are at the bottom and those who are at the top. The ones that are at the bottom are just constantly going down, declining sales, and the guys that are on the top are just getting richer and richer and richer every day, and that gap is starting to really widen out.
Yeah, and there's clearly there is the whole viral piece of the media, the influencers, because you see places like Dave's Hot Chicken. I think it's a great product, but it's a fried chicken tender. It's not healthy at all. And but if you are the hot brand, Chick-fil-A, Dave's Hot Chicken, Culver's, Jersey Mike's, they can get pushed through. And to your point earlier, if they can get bubble up on top of the awareness and they're getting that frequency, that's the ones who have the advantage and will win the game. And I feel like sometimes now it's not necessarily who has the biggest budget, who has that big, because McDonald's is out there, they spend more money than anybody and they're negative 3-4% in sales. So clearly the consumer is finding out about places differently. They definitely are into the experience. They don't want the same old, frozen breaded chicken tender that they got, 30 years ago. And I think that the chains that kind of answer that question are kind of hitting it out and doing well. And there's always going to be turnover. I remember our CEO from Beef Braised, Chuck Winship, was old Steak and Ale Bennigan's guy. And he said restaurant concepts normally have a 20 or 30 or 30 year life. And then some concepts can kind of adjust like McDonald's has, and some concepts go away like Bennigan's and Steak and Ale. I mean, and look at Quiznos. There's 2,500 Quiznos, and it was a great product, but that was more mismanagement by the franchisor, where they just weren't taking care of the franchisees have to make money. So there's different problems, different issues with each brand, but to stay relevant and alive, you have to kind of stay up. I felt with Little Greek, when we did some research early on, folks were like the good news, bad news. The good news is it's great food. It's very healthy. It's on trend. The bad news is most people don't know what Greek food is. They think it's a gyro, and we do grilled chicken and we do these fresh salads. And so a lot of it is educating the consumer on who you are, what you are, and trying to, kind of be ahead of the game a little bit. I have a friend of mine who had a concept. He had Daphne's over in San Diego, and was almost ahead of his time. I said, George, you were the first guy to kind of get in this whole Greek segment, back in the 80s and 90s, and it's really now starting to hit. And then there are some concepts like the buffet concepts that were big years ago that maybe just aren't that relevant to folks today, or the Steak and Ale Bennigans or the Ruby Tuesdays of the world just don't really resonate with folks. So that's kind of where the challenge, and I guess our job, and you're on the cutting edge, is what is the future look like? And I do ask people, like, what do you think restaurants will look like in 10 or 20 years? Will people still go out to eat inside restaurants, or they just want everything delivered? We have deliveries 100 yards away. They can walk to the restaurant and walk back quicker and cheaper than the food being delivered with door. But I think you said convenience. I call it lazy. they're like, I'll pay the extra money. We were doing a hiking trip in New Mexico. We go to McDonald's for some coffee in the morning, and I noticed on the door, they go DoorDash. I go, people order McDonald's, DoorDash, Uber Eats. They go, yeah. We had somebody yesterday. They ordered a large fountain Coke, and it was like $15. I go, you're kidding me. And I was with the Coca-Cola people, and they go, oh yeah, if I've been out partying, I'll do that the next day. I don't want to go out. I'll get a nice fountain drink. I go, it just kind of blows my mind that folks will do that. But I guess people are willing to pay for convenience. We hear stories about there'll be a home with four family members, mom and dad and 2 kids, and there's 4 different delivery drivers showing up because one wanted sushi, one wanted a burger, and it's crazy. So that is, I guess, the challenge is who has that crystal ball that can kind of see where it's going and make those moves. And I guess what you addressed earlier is that the technology allows you to connect with people on a more cost-effective basis. And then I think what you addressed, what your company does, is once you find that guest, get them back, because the hardest thing is acquiring them, and then the next thing is make sure that we stay on that rotation.
Wow, there is so much to unpack over there. Holy smoke. So let's double click on a lot of these topics. I'm starting to make notes. The convenience thing. I was at a customer of ours. Actually, I was at Dave's Hot Chicken corporate office. I was working out of there for about a week. And one of the guys just did exactly that. Just ordered coffee from downstairs, and he just made it upstairs. And then I'm like, hey, I'd love to go down there and just walk and I'll buy it and come back upstairs. So younger generation do that. They order coffee from downstairs to come up 5 flights of stairs because they don't want to get up and leave their desk. And sometimes there's a valid reason, right? You just don't want, you're in the middle of something or you're in a meeting, you can't go I get it. Just order it, and the convenience and the price is worth it. But again, some people will pay $15 for a fountain drink because that's what it is. And by the way, it's not just Uber Eats and DoorDash who've proven that. You could I was at NOA and I was buying these teas. I think it was like $4 each. And then we were in a CVS and I saw it. I'm like, I'll just buy another one here. And it was the individual one was $3, but they didn't have any, but it said $2.99. Right next to it, they had a 6-pack that was $7.97, so $8, right? So you pay $3 for one, but for 6 of them, you pay $8. But if you go to you go in a restaurant, that $3 is now $6. You go to the airport, it's $9. So again, I think where you are will make a huge impact on that. But again, you got to meet the customer where they are, because people will pay for that convenience, for that laziness to get it for whatever reason. And by the way, we all do that. I'm sure you probably do that as well. Maybe not on food or something, but somewhere else in a different line and in a different thing, right?
It drives me crazy. You go out to a restaurant and my wife will get a Coca-Cola and it's like $4 or $5. I said, we can get a 12-pack of Coke for $5. But it is people, they'll push through it. They do what they want to do, and sometimes it's not logical, but it is what it is. And I guess to your point, we got to kind of meet them where they are and kind of give them what they want. One of the things too, Little Greek over the years, every year we are 5-10%, and the last 2 years we've been flat. And as I look back at it, one of the things I'm thinking about is that a big, I think at McDonald's, two most profitable items at McDonald's are the French fries and the fountain drinks. So when you do the DoorDash Uber Eats delivery, we've lost that fountain drink sale, which is probably 5-10%. So that we've seen that go down because most people, when you're going to get a meal, the fountain drink, it's one thing to get your food 30 minutes later, comes home and it's you have to just heat it up. But if you have a fountain drink with ice, by the time 30 minutes later, it's all diluted down, melted. So the only way to get around it is with prepackaged sodas. But people normally have those at home. So I sometimes wonder if that's part of the dilution. I feel that no doubt the fact that we had to raise prices has kind of hurt sales because folks just won't eat out the values. In piece, I think we've lost a lot of our fountain sales because generally that drink, they can refill it, and before they leave, they get a drink. But when you're at home, it's normally you have those products at home, and so you're not going to order it as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah, that's absolutely a valid point. Let's get into the next topic. You said restaurants are mismanaged. Interesting word, because literally right before this podcast, I was writing something that says restaurants aren't broken, they're mismanaged. So where is that coming from on your side? Where do you see the mismanagement?
Well, I think there's a couple different levels, and certainly I don't want to paint the whole industry. I mean, there's the mass majority of the restaurants are well run and they got their act together. I think that what you find would be the more as the evolution of our country and some brands that were relevant, and for them all of a sudden come roaring back with this huge sales increase. Which basically they scaled their menu back, upgraded their dining experience by putting more servers on the floor, and they've had a huge sales boost, which is kind of unprecedented. I've never seen a chain like a legacy chain like that do that kind of turnaround that fast. So your earlier question was like, how is restaurants mismanaged? That's where folks come in. What Kevin did was, I think we shared, was he went around, talked to all the employees, managers, corporate staff, and they basically told them what the frustrations were, what was making them difficult to execute for the guests. We came up with that. They decided to attack McDonald's, kind of their home base, which is that value meal. And and we kind of went through that a little brief where we did a $9.99 promotion, and it was quite successful. But we are a franchise brand, so you have to get the franchisees on board. Chili's owns their store, so they can kind of make those moves in a much more efficient way. But it is a big undertaking. So the mismanagement piece is out there where there are folks who kind of figure it out and move forward, even with legacy brands. And you'll also have to be the hot Dave's Hot Chicken kind of new up and comer or Kava. There are room for existing folks to make those pivots and become relevant.
Agreed, 100%. So actually, it's very interesting. So Dave's Hot Chicken is obviously one of our customers, and these guys absolutely have crushed it. They just got acquired for $1 billion, a restaurant brand with 300 units, almost $1 billion in top line revenue, 100% franchised. But the thing, and I think the reason that Work paid that premium is because they've got another 1,000, 1,100 stores that are going to come up it's already on the pipeline coming down the road. And I've always said that there's going to be a handful of billionaires made in the restaurant industry. Kind of going back to my earlier point that the gap is getting so much wider that those that are at the bottom are just going to spiral out of control because they're just trying to cut costs. They're trying to save, sales are down, so they cut labor down instead of trying to address the underlying problem that, hey, the problem is not the labor is too high. It's a percentage of sales. Sales are down. Let's increase sales and we'll be back on track instead of, hey, let's just cut labor until oblivion, right? Until we become a Quiznos, until we become Steak and Ale or all these brands that have gone away because they failed to adapt and they failed to actually solve the underlying problem, and they just cost themselves out of business, right? It feels like that's exactly what has happened. But on the other hand, once you figure out that average unit volume, and once you figure out the financial metrics, you focus on that top line revenue, everything changes. Again, you get acquired for $1 billion freaking dollars because the AUVs are healthy and you've got people lining out the door trying to franchise their brand. And then Chili's is actually another great story. In fact, I was digging into their revenues. So imagine you brought it up, and I want to look at the 2021 numbers until today. I'm looking at their financial report, obviously being a publicly traded company. So instead of Chili's cutting labor and going that route, Kevin somehow pulled this off where revenues as of June of 2021 was $3.3 billion. June of 2022, it was $3.8 billion. That's a massive freaking change. That's almost like $500 million in additional revenue. Now you go fast forward to June of 2023, numbers are at $4.1 billion. They've gone up 800 million in 2 years. And June of 2024, the numbers are sitting at $4.4 billion in revenue. So if you don't think revenue is going to solve your problems, if you're not focused on retention, acquisition, and getting customers back in, you're mistaken. But it gets better. The trailing 12 months for the last 12 months at Chili's is at 5.1 billion in revenue. They've gone from 3.3 billion in revenue to 5.1 billion in revenue from 2021 until today. So, and by the way, all of that happens because of freaking revenue. Top line revenue matters. If you're not focused on top line revenue, what are you doing? You're not running a business, because money solves 100% of your problems. And by the way, that is exactly why Chili's has gone from a $30 stock to today trading at $180.33. There was no other way there for Kevin to do cost savings. It would have been impossible for him to triple, quadruple the stock value by saving money, saving labor, saving 2 points on food costs, saving 10 points on labor costs, and saving, 50% on G&A. You just can't do that. So it's a amazing story. Hats off to him for doing what he's done to focus on that value, to drive that revenue. And by the way, the more money you make, the more money you have and to spend on everything else. Imagine you increase your top line revenue. Like, this is what I don't get. This is why I think restaurants are mismanaged, because it feels like some people are just simply not doing the math. If you increase your revenue from 3.3 billion to 5.1 billion, let's say it's 2 billion to round it off. That extra $2 billion, 15% tip rate on that, what is that? 300 million in tips. So guess what happened? The customers also paid $300 million to offset the labor costs at Chili's because sales went up and people tip 15% minimum. So to me, it's mind-boggling why some people just don't sit down and do the math and be like, hey, the problem, ask why. Why not? Ask the two questions and figure out what the root cause is, and just go aggressively towards that and figure out where the process is broken, why the top line is not there, and drive top line.
Well, I think that the Kevin has done. It's truly a text, not text. It's just what a great case study of how to turn things around. I think our people, the restaurant industry, they understand you have to continue to increase sales. All of our leases, they go up 3% a year. The insurance has gone up dramatically, equipment's gone up dramatically, food and labor's gone up dramatically, electricity's gone up. So there's this constant friction where your costs are going up, sales have to increase, but then as you raise your price and your margins stay the same because your food cost is higher, labor cost is higher. Like in Florida, minimum wage has gone from $12 to $15. California, I think, are even $20 or $30. So it's just really a tight margin. And our business, all is average restaurant profitability 7%. Very tight margins. It's such a tough business. And to be able to drive that top line, it's always a challenge, because it also comes down to this. We have this quadrant thing where there's one side of the x-axis is unique, and the y-axis is important. And like at Beef Brady's, our TVs were important, because people want to watch the game, but were they unique? No. So the goal in our business is to get as many things in that quadrant 4, unique and important. So Chili's had a challenge because most of their menu was not unique and it was kind of important, but everybody else had it. But what they did was they created this value proposition that drove the traffic. Dave's Hot Chicken, their product is unique and important, so that's why they could drive it. You go to a pizza place and you're serving pepperoni pizza. How is your pepperoni pizza different than a billion others? And that's what I always tell people. They'll come to me and say, "Hey, Nick, I want to do this concept. I want to do a pizza." I go, "What are you to do that's unique and different that you offer that nobody else does?" Which has an advantage because we have a wonderful homemade salad dressing, tzatziki, and our ingredients we marinate, we make them from scratch. So we have some very great, key menu items that are unique and different that you can't really get other Greek restaurants or out there. And that'll be my thing where you go to a restaurant and they're serving frozen French fries, frozen chicken tenders. You're not going to cut it because anybody can get it and anybody can compete with you. And that's going to be always a challenge is trying to find those niches where you are the player, unique and important. And that's kind of what Dave's Hot Chicken did. And hats off to Kevin by coming back around and creating a wonderful burger, kind of went after the Big Mac meal or whatever, and just really hit it out of the park.
Yeah, because to him it now it's common sense because hindsight is 2020, right? When McDonald's burger is already a fries and a drink and a burger is $12. Well, would you rather have that at McDonald's where it's actually not beef, or would you rather go to Chili's and get beef, right? And actually, there was a really interesting thing about McDonald's. I just found it. I need to do some research on it. So I haven't done my research on that. But what I heard and what I understood is it says all beef patty, but the patty is not all beef. The name of the company is all beef. So the name of the company is All Beef Patty. So they sell a patty that's made by a company called All Beef Patty. But again, would you rather have that, or would you rather have Chili's and spend $1 more even, or $2 more to do that, or better yet, if it's the same cost? So, and by the way, when I say cost increases and price increases has been a thing in the last 2-3 years everywhere. We've taken a 30% cost increase on our cost of goods sold because it's gone up. Some of it we passed on, we had to pass on, and some of it we had to absorb and just live with it. And the way we lived with it is we said, you know what? There's a breaking point. The best way to fix that is go get more sales, go get more customers, and the more customers we have, the more profits we have, less percentage-wise, but higher dollar value. So if I make 10% of $1 million, I made $100,000. But if I make 10% of 10 million, I made $1 million, even though it's still 10%, or if it's 8%. So when I'm talking revenue, drive revenue, it's not just to increase price and price yourself out of the market. It's more focused on the retention. One thing that I don't understand, I started ringing this bell in 2020, late 2020, early 2021. That was, I was blown away by the number. National Restaurant Association had done a survey from Technomics, and it said 70% of restaurant guests don't go back. And I was like, that can't be true. Like, there's no way that a business can survive losing 70% of their customers. So I started digging in, and sure enough, that's the case. Like, and by the way, we see it in our platform. I see it in restaurants that are on our platform. It goes down like 40% are first-time visitors. Then it goes down to like 20%, goes down to like 10%, goes down to like 5-6%. And the good ones, we have a restaurant that does about 4 million AUV. That number goes up to 16.57%. So that's on the 5th visit. And what's happening is the customers are building that behavior. They're becoming part of that rotation or restaurant that they go to because it's part of that rotation. So my thing is increase revenue through guest retention. Retention. That is the key to success in the restaurant space. And I think that's how you drive top line revenue, where you become a Dave's, where you've got a line of 1,100, 1,200, 1,300 people saying, hey, I want to open a Dave's. I want to open a Dave's. Why do you think that is? Because AUVs just make sense. You could get your money back in 2 years. Good luck if you go to any other brand and open a restaurant and get your money back in 4 or 5 years. Now you could do it in 2 years. Why not?
Well, I will say I did see the CEO from Dave's. I think it was a woman was their design people. One of the things I think Dave's did, which there's some things going on behind the scenes that you might not be aware of. If you want to go out and build a restaurant today, like a freestanding uh, double drive-through or whatever, a couple of years ago it was like maybe $2 million. Today it's $4 million because land's gone up, construction costs have gone up, and so that means in our business that whatever your total land cost plus the build out, that's your break even. So we've seen some chicken tender chains that people have to spend $4 million to build it, but if they're only doing $2 million of sales, it's not going to work. Chili's had an advantage because they already had their footprints out there. Their buildings already been paid. They already had the dirt, their AC units, all that in place. So it's very difficult for new competitors coming to the market to compete with them because the construction costs are crazy. What Dave's Hot Chicken did, which was pretty clever, and what we do at Little Greek, they seek out shut down restaurant space, existing space, where they can go in, create an exterior profile in the building, which they've done a brilliant job of getting landlords to agree to kind of give them this like urban vibe, kind of a graffiti look. End caps where they can get the drive-through window and not spend the multi-million dollars, because a friend of mine has a chicken tender concept, and he said, Nick, it takes us 2 years to build. It's taken minimum, $2 or $3 million. And if I had that money sitting in the bank, it'd be, $400,000, $500,000 in profits I'd do. So the construction times are taking longer because it's harder to get permits. It's harder to get GCs, general contractors. It's more expensive. So there is these big barriers coming in that make that when folks open up, their model is not built to handle those type of sales unless you have the hot concept like Raising Cane's, because the Todd Graves, they're going to sell for, I think, $6 billion is left there. So they're even bigger than a Dave's Hot Chicken. But unless you have that hot concept, it's a tough time. And I recommend all operators try to find the shutdown restaurant where you can get open. We just did a Little Greek in Bradenton, Florida. Total investment less than $100,000. Opened in 45 days. It was a burger concept was going out. They had lost their lease. We stepped in, and he's doing $20,000. For us, our break even is around $600,000 or $700,000. He's doing over $1 million in sales right off the bat. That's the numbers that work. And also one thing I wanted to bring up to you as well, which you might not be aware of, is that a lot of our folks use SBA loans to build their business. And for years the interest rates were low. Well, as of 2 or 3 years ago, if you borrowed money back during COVID or around that time, you had a certain my monthly payments can be $10,000. Well, today with the rates going up, those people are hitting $15,000, $20,000 a month notes, and that's putting that additional squeeze that you really don't see, because you have a business and you're trying to run it, and even if your top line sales are good, all of a sudden your expenses have gone up on the bottom line $10,000, which that's a lot of money for a store doing maybe $100,000 a month. That's a 10% hit. So a lot of operators are struggling because of that debt service, which people really don't talk about it very much. But that's one of those hidden things that kind of comes at you where your hands are kind of tied because you don't have the money to do the extra repair maintenance or to do the extra staff, or you don't have the money to do the extra marketing.
I agree 1,000%. Actually, this morning I took a call at 9 a.m. My first meeting today was with the SBA loan because I'm buying another business, and I was talking to him and I'm like, hey, what am I looking at? He's like, right now 10.5% on the interest rate. And I'm like, okay, well, now I know my number. I think you touched on something that we did a webinar yesterday that I encourage everybody to listen to. It's the whole concept was know your numbers, like the fundamentals that drive the business. And I'm obviously you're a successful restaurateur because you touched base on the most important number in the restaurant. What is my break-even point before I even open the door? You know what your break-even point is. Now I got to go figure out what my break-even point is with a 10.5% interest at X number of millions of dollars to see if the numbers make sense. If it doesn't make sense, I'm not buying it. It doesn't make sense financially.
And then the other thing that's hard sometimes is you don't have the crystal ball, and you'll build your numbers on 10.9% interest. But what if the rates go up again? And all of a sudden your model was built on, well, my monthly payments could be X, but all of a sudden it goes up. And I've had, friends, and they're having to go back and refinance, extend their loans because it's just too much pressure. So, I talked to Bob Basham, one of my mentors, who's the CEO of Outback, and we also talk about, every year, restaurants, we got bullets coming at us. There's, 1 year there's no labor, and then there's no sales, and then there's inflation, and you can't get equipment. There's COVID, and just all this stuff, tariffs, where you can't get, who knows what price is going to happen. And as we get older and older, I go, Bob, it just seems like there's more and more bullets coming at us. That it's a tough business already, and it just continues to get more and more challenging. But you got to love our industry, where people, they'll dust themselves off, and let's just keep going, and let's figure it out. And the strong will survive. And that is, I guess, the lesson we learned. The smart ones will kind of make their moves and try to make sure that their business model is built to be resilient, and they have some extra room there, that if the rates do go up, they can handle it. And sadly, sometimes they won't. But then for me, if that operator doesn't make it, then my guys can come in, take over that existing space for a lot less money, get open a lot quicker for a lot less, and your break even is lower too. So it's a tricky deal. But the one challenge our industry has, it's a relatively low cost of entry. You see these tech folks, they have some very sophisticated, very big money they need to raise to get in. Where here, we had a guy open it for $100,000, which is, it's money, but it's approachable. So that's all of our challenges, that anybody can kind of come in and open up a Greek restaurant around the corner from me, and maybe take a little, oh, Nick, it's only going to be a couple points of sales, but sometimes, that, to your point, that's that extra margin, that extra, $5,000 or $10,000 in sales. That's where the profits are, because there's a thing called flow through, where you need a certain amount of money to cover all your fixed costs, rent, insurance, your base labor, and then there's a variable cost. But once you get over that break even point, it's a 30% profit margin. Our industry, the key thing in our industry is called the prime cost, food and labor. Those need to be below 60%. If you're going to open a concept where your food cost is 35% and your labor is 35%, you're never going to make it, because it's just too much of an extra push. And so if you can keep that, and obviously the lower you get below that 60%, the more room you have to play around with. So as and it's also kind of a tricky thing for us. Our food inbound food's going up. How much do you want to raise the price to try to offset, or how much do you eat? And it's always a difficult game. So it's a tricky industry. You love it, and you got to kind of dust yourself off every day and get back in the game and try to figure it out. But at the very beginning of your show, you brought up, you got to have great food. And it needs to be unique and different, and executed well. It can't be this regular, I'm serving the same pizza as the other guy, the same chicken tender as Dave's or whatever. And you got to have great serves. It's got to be clean, and it's got to be good price value. And if you can hit all those things, then your chances of success are good, as long as you got that front end where you didn't spend too much money to get built, didn't take too long, and your numbers, to your point at the very beginning of the show. I remember I talked to Greg Dollarhide, who's done a lot of successful chains that he's built. And I said, Greg, when you look for a franchise concept, what do you look for? He said, the economic model. Does the core model of, at this number of sales, at this cost to build, and I can make this much money. If those numbers are there, go with it. If the numbers aren't working, and well, gee, we got 2 units that do this, and that's kind of our Rose's menu, that's not going to fly. You got to make sure that most of the stores, and in my world, my game is, I need franchisees making money. As long as they're making money, it works. If they're not making money, then the whole thing kind of collapses. That's where we saw Quiznos go from 2,500 restaurants down. I think they have 2 or 3 left today. Their economic model was not built for success.
That's amazing. Oh my God. Like again, yesterday we were talking about all the prime cost and the unit economics. These are all fresh, because literally I did a live webinar with Kendall Ware about, the fundamentals, like figure out what your prime cost is, figure out what those numbers are, and figure out what your break even point is. And I'll challenge you on that. I would tell you that once you cross, let's say your $700,000 is your break even point, and you get to $1 million on that $300,000, fine, you'll make 30%, 20%, 10% margin. But once you go over that $1 million mark, you're not making 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%. You should be making 60 or 70%, because literally the only cost that you'll need is just your food costs. Now, let's say you put 30% food costs, 10% for miscellaneous coupons, discounts, and promos, and all of that jazz. You should still net 60%. You don't net 60%, you should net 50% bottom line on that additional revenue because your fixed overhead is the same. So I think knowing your inflection points, 2 inflection points, your break even point, that's where you start making money, earning money. And then your next point is, at what stage do I just absolutely crush it and go from a 10%, 8% margin to 40, 50, 60% margins because my fixed operating expenses are the same regardless.
Well, the one other thing that I like to share a little bit too is Little Greek is comprised of owner operators. So we call in our business we call mom and pops. So 80% of our franchisees are from other countries. They come in and say, "Hey, I want to open up a Little Greek." And a key difference though is they are working in a store every day. So when you're an investor and you're trying to make money, it's a different ball game because you have to pay a GM 50, 60 grand to run the store. Where when my owner operators work at it, they're putting that 50 or 60 grand in their pocket. And that gives, I like the mom and pop operators because I sometimes see some of my friends are like, they want a franchise. We want all the big sophisticated multi-unit guys. And I'm not crazy about them because they're only looking for the money. They don't care about my brand. There's no passion for the brand. They're just looking for return on investment. And at the end of the day, they have managers in those stores. And the best operators like Chick-fil-A, they figured out how to get those owners, those managers to think like owners. But the vast majority of managers, they don't care. And at the end, it's the end of their shift, time to go home. Their day off, they're not coming in. They're not going to do the extra marketing. So there are these little intangibles in business that allow the owner operator to exceed and to be more resilient than the bigger, more sophisticated multi-unit guys too. So that's a little sidebar deal. I mean, as folks are looking at what business they want to do and how they want to grow, as you grow, then you have to add infrastructure to that some of those costs get eaten up by that as well.